session, and we will, let's get started. Okay, great. So, my name is Lauren. For those of you who I haven't spoken with before, I'm the manager of community engagement for Slow Food USA, which means that part of my role at the national office is to oversee our biodiversity programming, including the Arc of Taste and the Presidia projects. So this presentation is aiming to give folks who are involved with Arc of Taste products and are maybe looking to bring your product or food community to the next level, so to speak, by creating a Presidia. So I want to give a big shout out and thanks to Jerry Warren, who is our Arc of Taste Pacific Northwest, one of their co-chairs for that regional committee, and also is the Presidium coordinator for the Macaw Ozette potato. Hello?
Hello, hi, it's Elisa from Slow Food International.
Hi, Lisa. I'm glad you could join us and I can hear you.
Hi. I'm sorry, I had some problems with my computer, so I had to dial in from my phone. So sorry for the delay.
No problem. I'm glad you're on. Thanks for joining us. I know it's kind of late in Italy right now, so I appreciate that.
No problem. So sorry for interrupting you.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just about to introduce Elisa. So she is the project manager in community engagement, working with the North American and Northern European slow food chapters and national associations based in Italy. And we will, I'm sure, have more questions for Elisa later. But there's a lot of information in this slideshow, so we're just going to move through it. So a brief history of the Presidio, just to kind of get you situated in a slow food historical context. The project began in Italy as the working arm of the Arc of Taste. In 2000, it really, by that time it took off, and there were 90 Italian Presidia that were presented at the Salone del Gusto, which is the gathering that happens every couple of years with alongside now with Terra Madre, that showcases Italian food products and food products from around the world in Turin every year. So that prompted the establishment of the International Presidia Project. And within 2 years, almost 20 Presidia were created. So there was a lot of momentum. And today in the United States, there are technically 5 American Presidia products. Those include the American raw milk cheeses, and we have Matteo on the line, who was one of the founders of that Presidia, the Macaw Ozette potato, which is based in the Pacific Northwest, and again, Jerry Warren is that coordinator and founder. The Navajo churro sheep, based on Navajo Nation in the Southwest, is one of our Presidia. The Sebastopol Gravenstein apple, which is based just north of San Francisco in California, and then the wild rice Anishinaabe Manumin in the Midwest and sort of Minnesota Great Lakes region is also one of our Presidia projects. So I would say each of these projects is kind of in a different stage right now as far as how active it is, where it is sort of in dormancy or not. So we will, I'm sure, revisit those a little bit later. So I guess to give you an idea of this Italian word that might not be clear what exactly it means. So when you look up the word Presidia in the dictionary, it says it's an administrative body. It's a guarding, it's a defender. It's this idea that we are guardians or defenders of the natural biodiverse food world. Presidia is the plural term and Presidium is singular. So if you hear me kind of using those two words somewhat interchangeably, it's because it's referring to the same thing. So basically, the Presidia are projects in which Slow Food works with groups of small-scale producers to resolve difficulties they may face being small, uniting them if they're isolated, and really connecting them with alternative markets that are understanding and sensitive to their situation as being small producers of really quality artisanal products. So a Presidium is a body or community of resources that's formed to guard or defend represent a product, a foodway, or a culinary institution in that way. So Presidia products typically start off as an arc of taste product. So it's really essential to make direct contact with producers in your community. Those people who share slow food values and philosophies, who are then really motivated as producers to develop the project. Um, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but basically, to create a Presidia, you also have to identify the environmental sustainability aspects of it, and then as well as social and economic sustainability. So Presidia typically comes in three forms. For those products that start off existing within the arc of taste, or they are arc-like products, those that could qualify, a product can be either a domestic species, including an edible plant variety or an animal breed, a wild species, especially when linked to a specific harvesting or processing technique with traditional uses, or a processed product, which has a particular sensory quality that's linked to traditional knowledge and territory and memory and identified in a community. And this would be produced in limited quantities using artisanal methods and is at risk of extinction. That processed good could be something like bread. And an animal variety, we have Piney Woods cattle, Mike Hansen on the line, that would be eligible because it's already on the arc of taste. The second form that a Presidia can take is when it is developed around a regional agricultural production or distribution process that uses traditional or historical methods. So the products that are obtained through these practices can be multiple products, and some may be at risk of extinction and some may not, but it's really focused on preserving the method and the product that is involved in this method. Some examples.
Could you give me an example of that?
Yeah.
One example I can add on that, and one tangible example is the French Presidium of the Prud'homme. In the Marseille area, in the southern part of France, where the Presidium is focused on the traditional fishing technique and management of the fishing and local resources, both from the fishing part, then in the distribution sector. So it's not on, the Presidium is not specifically focused on one single species, or on a specific fish, but on the fishing technique, traditional fishing technique, and the management of the fishing resources in that area.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks, Elisa.
You're welcome.
I think another good example of looking at a Presidium product that involves really the process would be the American raw milk cheeses. So they are from across the U.S. and they're really united by their commitment to safeguarding and promoting this method of cheese production that uses raw milk rather than pasteurized milk. So looking at that, the process within a more broader, difficult context of rigid laws around hygiene and food safety and things like that. The third type of Presidium is developed to protect a rural landscape or ecosystem that is at risk of extinction. For example, some forms of biodiversity that are at risk of extinction, for example, local breeds or plants that grow wild in a forest, can only be saved if a particular landscape or ecosystem is saved. Often this involves protecting and identifying certain ancient agricultural practices, such as terracing with stone walls. And there are one example of this would be in Senegal. There is a wild fruit juice Presidium that offers local inhabitants an alternative to overfishing, while at the same time safeguards the trees in this really special nature reserve where the fruit trees grow. So of these three different forms of Presidia, I would say that the first one is the most relevant to the people on this call because it's related to a specific product like fruit or vegetable variety or an animal breed. So, yeah, let's see. What a Presidium is not. Just to review, it is not a project that exploits the powerful marketing advantage that slow food could offer an individual, a producer, or a single nonprofit. I'm sure you all know that, but that is just a quick reminder that the snail often brings powerful marketing clout, and the Presidium, we obviously just never want it to be abused and misrepresented. So, on a practical level, a Presidia is a small-scale economic development project that involves food communities in safeguarding native breeds, plant varieties, and food products. The goal is to save traditional, artisanal quality foods, strengthening the organization of producers, raising the profile of a specific geographic area, preserving traditional techniques and knowledge while also promoting environmentally and socially responsible production models. So it is this really exciting, powerful project and tool that Slow Food is promoting around the world that works directly with producers. So we're excited that there is a revived interest in starting new Presidia in the U.S. So thank you all for joining this call again. The next slide is about selection criteria. So how do you know if your product is eligible to become a Presidium product? So the good, clean, and fair of the matter. So your product needs to be consistent with the arc of taste. And I'm going to kind of just go over what this means. For example, taste, the food must be of a distinctive quality with regard to sensory point of view, taste, smell, and that quality should be defined by local practices and traditions. In general, the food must be good. We are not boarding things to the arc or creating Presidia for food products that are, I don't know, just kind of bland or meh. They want to be special, and that's the reason they taste good, and that's why one of our primary motivators for why we're trying to preserve them. Also consistent with the arc of taste guideline.
Lauren?
Mhm.
Lauren, can you flip through the slide deck? I don't see you flipping through it. Can you do that?
Can anyone else who's on their computer, do you see the selection criteria slide?
No, I just see the cover. I just see the first page.
Yeah, I just see the first page too. I was trying to figure out what to do here.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. I think it's not. Oh, there it goes.
Sorry about that.
Just changed.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. Sorry about that. I'm sure you're all having trouble following me if this slideshow is not actually changing. Okay, let's see. What do you see now? Selection criteria?
Yep.
Okay.
We all see that.
Great. Thank you for interrupting. Please interrupt at any time if the presentation's not working or if you have a question. So the second aspect besides taste.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
One of the things that we've done in the ARC is rather than exclusively calling it extinction, we've called it extinction or underappreciated. Do you think that's reasonable? Extinction is pretty definitive.
Yes. No, I think it's very reasonable.
Thank you. I will
Underutilized.
add those
yes.
notes. Underappreciated, underutilized, or at risk of extinction. Yes, that is very helpful. Thank you. So the food product should be linked to the memory and identity of a specific group. If it's a vegetable species or an animal breed, it should be well acclimatized and come from a specific area. And it's hopefully been in that place and rooted in that geographic community for some time. And in the case of processed food products, the main ingredient must come from the local area. The relationship between that product and the place should be documented through some kind of written or oral evidence. And the food must also be linked to a specific area with environmental, socioeconomic, and historical perspectives that are tied to it. So again, Slow Food very much cares about the story behind our food, and for Arc of Taste and Presidia products, that story and the connection between product and place and people is fundamental. Small scale. The food must be produced in limited quantities by small farms or producers. The producers must be artisans who apply traditional knowledge to all the production phases. And ideally, this knowledge has been passed down through generations or shared from producer to producer throughout the years. Their products will have a specific identity and distinctiveness and are not standardized or produced on a large commercial scale. However, just a quick note, it is definitely preferable to avoid creating a presidium if the production quantity is so extremely small, such that it's a few plants in one person's garden or it's a hobby, because there actually won't be enough of the product to really promote. So in this case, it's better to just promote and raise awareness to actually get it into production so that it can actually reach the threshold of becoming a Presidia. So the last risk of extinction or underappreciated or underutilized, this is consistent with the Arc of Taste as well. And that's important. That's the reason we want to save it. So that is part of the good of the good, clean, and fair of Presidia. The clean or environmental sustainability, producers must use cultivation techniques that are in line with slow food values and preserve the fertility of land and water, avoid or minimize as much as possible the use of chemicals and synthetic inputs, and maintain traditional methods of cultivation and land management where possible. Intensive monocultures are not permitted. Intensive animal farming or unsustainable fishing or GMO is not permitted. On the Slow Food Foundation website, there's a section with general guidelines for cultivation, breeding, and processing that could be looked to in your developing your own production protocols, which I will talk about in a little bit. The third aspect of the selection criteria is around fair or social sustainability. Presidium always involves a food community, so it's not a project that's in favor of an individual producer or producers that don't collaborate with each other, but rather a community of producers that work together, that play an active role, and they need to be operating without being influenced by large companies or landowners. And so they really have to be autonomous in their business, but willing to collaborate and work together around designing production protocols and marketing the product. They could even unite into collective bodies like a producers association or a cooperative or something like that. One of the objectives of the Presidia is to really obtain an adequate and profitable price for producers so that they can improve their own quality of life and that of their families. But this price must also be transparent and fair for consumers. Around the world, Presidia products are typically produced in really marginal environments. So whether it's in the high mountains or on islands or in isolated rural areas, they're always not always the most favorable conditions. So the products will require, in general, more care and manual skill, and can usually only be made in small quantities anyway. And Slow Food recognizes that the global food market does not always recognize the true value of these artisanal products that require so much time and effort and resources. So this is part of the goal of the Presidia, to really get a fair price for high quality products that people are putting a lot of time into it. Establishing what a fair price is for the consumer and producer is not easy. Producers have to make an effort to quantify processing times and keeping track of their costs, including production expenses like energy, raw materials, transportation, etc., and then set an honest profit margin. And then consumers, we really ask the slow food consumer or co-producer to make a good effort to look at Presidia products and food products, but not automatically compare them to prices of products that are similar in the industrial food system, because that is just, it's not a realistic comparison. Consumers need to be willing to pay more for these artisanal products. So I guess just a quick overview of how Presidia are supported within the slow food world and who some of the stakeholders and players are in the project. The Slow Food Foundation for Biodiversity, based in Italy, is really the main overseer of the Presidia project. It is the technical body that evaluates and supervises projects, and it works in partnership with local producers, local chapters, and national associations like Slow Food USA to bring these Presidia into existence. The foundation also works.
Excuse me, Lauren.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. There's one comment I wanted to make before we get past it and I forget it.
Sure.
The term co-producer I find is very confusing to people. They don't know what the hell it means. And I think that either using a different term or explaining it is going to be valuable to the folks when it comes to trying to consider what we mean by co-producers.
This is Matteo.
Yeah.
Speaking. Will you just announce yourself, your name, so we can know
I'm sorry, Matteo. This is Jerry Warren.
Great.
I'm the old dog in the pack.
Elisa, how does SFI usually explain the term co-producer?
Co-producer, the term has been used by Carlo Pizzini in many of his speeches to identify the active role of consumers in being aware of the role that they have in driving the market, because by choosing what products they want to buy, they will influence the market in terms of what will be the products available, both the products available. So the term consumers as a passive meaning in itself, and we wanted to get the consumers know that they can have and they should have an active role in cooperating and supporting the producers by being co-producers and by being conscious and aware consumers.
Thanks, Elisa.
Laura?
Go ahead.
This is Laura Luciano.
Something is lost in the translation.
Hello? I have a suggestion. I mean, I think maybe we could, I see that as perhaps somebody that's a champion of a product or somebody that's an ambassador to a product. I think those two words, that language in the United States kind of supports exactly that sentiment that was just translated from SFI.
Thanks, Laura. That's good feedback.
I mean, we are using the word co-producers. Well, we have been using this knowing that, the term needs some explanations and some additional details on that. But if you want to add and use specific terms or more or other terms, you will be certainly then free to do that, of course. So to find a better way to explain and to engage people more actively and understand the project more broadly.
Thanks, Elisa. Okay, I'm going to keep flying through our presentation because we have a lot to cover and I want to leave time for questions and answers at the end. So the Foundation for Biodiversity also works with experts around the world, so veterinarians, agronomists, etc., who help consult and work with producers around production protocols and troubleshooting and things like that. So in addition to the Foundation for Biodiversity, Slow Food USA plays somewhat of a role. So for example, me giving this presentation, also emailing offline with some people about coordinating Presidia. But in general, Slow Food USA will not be playing a huge role in the Presidia just because of limited staff capacity. There is a local coordinator. So this is a volunteer who's responsible for developing the project locally. And oftentimes the person who submits the nomination form also becomes the local coordinator. So just a heads up that might be what you're signing yourself up for if you're nominating a product. The producers, of course, the Presidia is very producer-centric, so these people are willing to work together to collaborate on production protocol and things like that. Funders, so the possibility to cover project costs through local resources. Funding is definitely an important part of Presidia, and it often requires local fundraising. Maybe working with the local slow food chapter in your area to do some of that fundraising. So what are the steps involved in starting a Presidia? I have very, very detailed notes on these and I will send them out to you, but I'm going to give the really abbreviated version for now. So the first step would be to identify the product or the traditional or historic method that you would like to preserve. Number 2 is identifying the producers in your community. Third would be obtaining a commitment from your local chapter to support the project. 4, completing the Presidium nomination or application form, which we can send you. Then it would be organizing an initial visit with the producers. And that visit might involve, Elisa, is that the visit that someone from Slow Food would go to?
Yes, and then it's someone from Slow Food. Might it be Slow Food USA or someone from the Slow Food Foundation for Biodiversity? Of course, in close collaboration with the local chapters.
Yes, great, thank you.
This is Mateo speaking. So because the Raw Milk Cheesemakers Association is defunct, but we would have to do this all over again. I mean, a lot of this has been done.
Yes, this has been already done at the initial creation and steps of the Presidium. So we might skip this part.
Okay. Thanks, Elisa. After organizing that initial visit with producers, you will want to determine 1 or 2 local coordinators, someone from the Slow Food chapter and then someone who is representing the project. Then working together with the producers to draw up a production protocol, which we have lots of templates for, so don't worry, you wouldn't be inventing that from scratch. Determining your Presidium name, defining the production area, and then if needed, organizing training or technical assistance for the producers. Again, if needed, uniting the producers under a co-op or an association, and then launching and sustaining the Presidium, which does require funding in general to create promotional materials, maybe to cover the costs of a visit if an expert like an agronomist or veterinarian is coming, to participate in international events, things like that. Okay, what does Slow Food, so that might seem like a little bit of an overwhelming list of things to do, but not to worry. Slow Food will be offering support throughout this process. So again, by coordinating with you around technical assistance, so consulting with experts, supporting in the creation of production protocol with our templates, if needed, supporting in the creation of a co-op or producers association. We will promote Slow Food through we will promote your Presidium through slow food publications and events, therefore assisting in marketing, and then also contributing to building community among the small scale farmers, both through in-person meetings at events, as well as exchanging best practices and experiences in virtual meetings as well. Just a quick note on the production protocol. The protocol is they're a really important tool to protect and document the Presidia products. The main objectives are to really guarantee that the product is going to be of really high quality, so artisanal, good taste, and requires that the producers who participate in the project commit to maintaining the integrity of their production techniques. The production protocol also, we want it to foster a deeper understanding among producers by giving them the opportunity to really come together, think about their own production techniques and styles, compare and contrast with each other, and then write down all the aspects of their traditional knowledge. So in some ways, the very process of coming together and writing the protocol is a form of safeguarding traditional knowledge. So a little more about how Slow Food promotes and communicates Presidia. So the global, okay, let's see. Slow Food's many promotion and communication activities are aimed at raising the profile of Presidia products and bringing producers and consumers closer together. Examples of those include the Chefs Alliance. So this is an international effort that is getting off the ground in the United States as we speak. The soft launch of the Chefs Alliance is happening now, and then the really big public launch will happen at Slow Food Nations, the big festival we're hosting this summer. So part of the Chefs Alliance is to ask chefs to commit to using Arc of Taste products on their menu, including Presidia products. So trying to link producers with chefs to highlight Presidia. Earth markets are another example. These are really special farmers markets that are community run, and there's really strict guidelines to an earth market, and there's actually only one in the United States, and that's in Greenville, South Carolina. So I'm going to kind of breeze through that because I don't think the earth market is super relevant to everyone on the call. CSAs or buying groups is another way that Slow Food uses the network to bring together producers and consumers by including direct sales. And then also through campaigns. So Slow Food International and Slow Food USA run lots of different campaigns and initiatives. So right now we're in the middle of the Arc of Taste Garden Challenge spring campaign that is encouraging schools and families and individuals and chapters to grow Arc of Taste products in their gardens. So we can use Presidia products sometimes to help us launch into campaigns. If you're logging in from your computer, you'll see an example of the narrative label, an image that was created from Slow Food International. So it's a really specific product labeling project that gives a lot of information from the production area to the harvest, processing, storage, that actually goes on the label of the Presidia product and can be shown in stores and supermarkets and things where there's typically food in a store will never have this much information. So Slow Food is really trying to tell the story of Presidia through these narrative labels. As far as logo use,
this is Mateo. This is Mateo. How would something like that work with cheese?
Yes, that's a good question.
We worked with some cheese Presidia in Italy and also in the UK. So, for example, we worked together with them to create kind of stickers to use on the like when you sell like cheeses in like not the whole wheel of cheese, but just a part of it. And sometimes there's narrative labels If you're talking about like farm shops, they could also be like displayed at the counter and made it visible to all the customers, even though they are not on each single product. But for example, for cheeses, we had some like stickers that we used.
Does that help, Matteo?
Yeah, so it's going to be really about engaging retailers in terms of signage and what.
Right. I mean, it's easier when we are dealing with direct selling on farm shops or from the producers directly, because then you can have this materials available. Otherwise, it's a communication work that the Presidium coordinator and the producers would need to do with retailers and local shops in adding this information on the shelves or made them available for customers.
Got it.
Thanks, Elisa. So just about a quick statement about logo use. So unfortunately, it is not possible to use the Slow Food snail logo on packaging or product labels at all. However, you can certainly mention and describe the Presidia project and product in brochures or posters, and that goes for the Arc of Taste logo as well. And the Presidio logo. So none of these logos, because they're copyrighted and really like trademarked by Slow Food International, they cannot be used as part of marketing, but can be used for education and flyers that you put on a table if you're at a farmer's market or farm stand or something like that. Currently, the Presidio logo is only sanctioned for use in Italy and Switzerland.
Yes, and there's yeah. No, sorry.
Oh, anything else, Elisa?
No, sorry. Sorry for interrupting you.
Oh, no, it's okay. So I guess just a recap of elements that really guarantee the success of a Presidium is direct sales. So Elisa mentioned this, that direct sales are often the most effective way to market and sell the product directly to consumers. This emphasis on personal knowledge and close relationships between producers and the local slow food chapter, regular participation in slow food events, whether that is your local chapter event, a national event like Slow Food Nations, or internationally like Terra Madre, as well as relationships between producers and consumers and chefs and producers. Okay, quickly a note about I already talked about this. I already talked about communications and events. I'm going to move through this. I really want to save time for questions. So some of the possible future goals for the Presidia are really around just improving the process from the Slow Food USA, the national, and even international standpoint. So in the future, some of our goals are to really improve the monitoring and evaluation process of the Presidia projects. As I said, there are 5 across the U.S., and in the past, Slow Food USA hasn't really had the capacity to follow up with them. But I mean, in the future, I think that would be ideal. It's hard to say sort of where that's going, but in a great world, monitoring and evaluation and follow up would be really good. Education, we really want to make sure the product quality is improved and people just understand more about what makes a product high quality. And that could be through developing associations of producers, increasing their technical capabilities, and giving producers the skills to facilitate their own promotion and sale of their products. It would be great if we could provide more ongoing support to projects, simplify communications. So right now, I think we're still trying to figure out Slow Food USA versus Slow Food International, and who's really communicating with the Presidia coordinators. So determining that, as well as just overall increasing the market share and visibility for small producers. That's like our big overarching goal, as well as long-term project sustainability. So I have Jerry on the line. I thought it'd be great to give an example. So Jerry, I don't know if you're able to share just briefly, maybe 5 minutes or less, about your experience with the Macaw Ozette Potato Presidium. I have this list of people involved, and then I have this second slide with some of the tips you provided in the slideshow you gave me.
You know, Lauren, you're doing such a great job at interpreting this. Why don't you just go ahead? And I'll make some comments. But basically, when we started out, the one thing I'd like to say before I forget again is that on slide 8, you need to include indigenous or cultural groups as those supporting. As you see at the bottom, the Macaw Nation was instrumental in helping us particularly identify and develop the marketing name for the potato. So
thanks, Jerry.
Well, it's self-explanatory. To do a project that has to do with the potato, and maybe a brief explanation. Everybody know about the Macaw Ozette potato? Do you want me to give you just a 2 minute?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. All potatoes originated in the Andes, went to Europe with the Spaniards, and returned to North America with the people who came, the folks who migrated to the U.S. So, however, the Spaniards in 1791 were coming up the coast of America, and they brought with them some remnants of a garden that they'd always had at their forts. They tried to establish a fort at Nia Bay, which is on the northern westerlymost tip of the United States, except for Alaska. And they tried to establish a fort there. They left the fort because they couldn't keep their ships in the harbor, but there were remnants of the potato that were left in the garden that the Macaw found. And they were starving for carbohydrate. They had to trade with the interior Indians for Wapato and Camas. And so they found these potatoes in the garden, and they began to grow them, and they grew them for 200 years before anybody found them. And we have continued. I met a man who knew something about the potato and knew about the macaw. He was one of my fellow winemakers, as a matter of fact, from Forks, Washington. And he introduced me to this, and we just began to build this as something that was really relevant. It's turned out to be a great product because it has a huge historical meaning, and it has a remarkable flavor if you don't mess it up. The biggest thing we've had a problem with is people taking that potato, which has a very unique flavor profile, and dumping it into recipes that completely destroy the distinctiveness of the product. But anyway, we're working on that too. I think that what we've done is I think it's really important to get, say, the people like the folks we've listed here, to be partners in this thing and get people excited about the fact that you've got something that is meaningful and can be brought to the community.
That's great. Thanks, Jerry. I think that this slide definitely illustrates how much the Presidia projects are a collaboration and a team effort from multiple stakeholders. So for those of you who are dialing in from your phone, just so you know what we're looking at, there have been 5 people involved in the Macaw Ozette Presidium project, including Jerry, the coordinator, the Forks organization, which is formerly Seattle Chefs Collaborative, the USDA Agriculture Research Station, Pure Potato is their certified potato seed grower, and then, of course, Macaw Nation, Neha Bay, tribal elders. So it's been a real partnership between indigenous communities as well. So these were some other tips that Jerry shared with me that I will just read out before we move on to Q&A. He suggested the importance of developing a preliminary vision of what your outcomes are. What is it that you want to do? What could happen? Why are you doing this? A visioning and kind of goal setting exercise. And then writing that down, figuring out what motivates you and why you want to create the Presidium. Identify all the players or stakeholders who might be interested in participating in the vision and the project. Who might you be missing? Who could contribute to achieving the vision? Track everyone down. Find all the producers who might want to get involved. Make sure you're not missing anyone. And then assemble your collaborators. Physically is always ideal, but if not, electronically over the phone or on a webinar or something. And really make sure you obtain everyone's buy-in into this vision. Everyone should feel like they have a stake in the matter and that an opportunity for them to share their opinions. And then make that process really democratic, so you can revise it and change the vision based on that input. As a result, develop a specific list of objectives to reach the desired outcome, and then a timeline for how you believe you will achieve your bigger goals. Making sure that all the collaborators or stakeholders have clearly established roles, and then they know what they're doing and they commit to that assignment. And then performing some kind of pilot project or feasibility study to try out your concept on a smaller scale is always a good idea. I think one last example related to the macaw ozette potato and also the bodega red potato. We have Alyssa on the call who's starting a Presidium for that. Slow Food USA on the national level worked with Pure Potato, which is the certified potato seed company that Jerry worked with, to share hundreds and hundreds of pounds of these potatoes with school gardens across the U.S. So we had almost 200 schools participate last year, and over 500 schools this year. So this is one example of how Presidia can really take off and gain attention, and we're sending information and literature to all these schools about the products. So that is all I have. There's a lot of information, so I'm sure there are questions. If people just want to shout it out, we can start answering some questions.
Hey, Lauren, this is Mike Hansen.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, so one of the challenges we have for Piney Woods cattle, I heard a lot of mentions about quality and quality of the product. And obviously, I'm implying that quality means a consistently flavorful product. And piney woods in Mississippi that graze on Bermuda grass are going to taste different than piney woods that graze on kudzu and privet and fescue in North Carolina. Have you had other producers that have had the same kind of challenges that have gone through a Presidio project in Europe?
Elisa, maybe you can answer this one.
I'm not sure to got the whole the question right.
So what?
So in terms of beef, the taste of the beef, Alicia, is
right.
Is different depending on what you feed the cow. So in Mississippi,
right,
it's all grass-fed.
Yes.
It's grass-fed beef. So down in Mississippi, it will taste different because they have no grass in the winter, for example, because it dies at the first frost. Whereas in North Carolina, we've got fescue pretty much all year long, and we've also got different native grasses, native bushes, and weeds that are growing that the cattle will eat as well. So in terms of the way we like to think about piney woods cattle in the community is it's kind of like raw honey. Depending on what you forage, the bees forage, if they have clover, it will taste one way. If they forage another flower, it'll taste another way. So in terms of the Presidia, I'm hearing a lot of, in terms of the protocol, quality and consistency. How, do you have anybody that has the same kind of challenges in applying these types of issues to a Presidio application?
Thank you for making it more clear for me. Yes, we in the production protocol, we worked with the breeders and with the producers to highlight this element, especially the feeding element in terms of beef, because as you mentioned, in different seasons, animals might be fed with different products, and then the result and the influence on the meat is of course different. So we have worked with other Presidia, like beef Presidia in Europe, in Italy, in Switzerland, but also in Germany. But let's say the area of production has always been quite limited. So of course, differences in feeding or breeding the animals have been taken into consideration, but the differences are not so big, because the area of production is not so, I mean, it's not so different from one place to the other. So one of the role of the meeting of the group of producers is to outline the differences in terms of breeding and in terms of also feeding, and find common elements and specific elements that have to be written in the production protocol, but also leaving space for some differences in terms of taste and in terms of feeding and in terms of also breeding technique, but keeping some key elements shared and common for all the producers. So
This is Matteo.
Yes.
This is a particularly confusing part of the raw milk cheese making Presidia, because with raw milk you can make 1,000 totally different products. So it's one of the things that was a real struggle for the Presidia early on.
Yes.
Is you're not necessarily measuring subtle differences in flavor. They can be completely different products.
Okay.
Right.
So
interesting. So, Matteo, is it possible that I could talk to you offline just about some of the challenges around that? Because I think that they may not apply directly to beef, but I think there's definitely something that we can learn from you on the challenges that you've had.
Sure. I'm not sure that I'll be much help, because I'm not sure that we overcame those challenges. I think, honestly, that's going to be one of the biggest hurdles. There's a number of significant hurdles to establishing a successful raw milk cheese Presidia. But we can share what the experience was, and I think we had 2 or 3 kind of judging events or assessment, product assessment events. But I think our industry has matured a lot since we did that. We may have a better chance of really defining some criteria in a way that would be more useful than what we were doing back in 2006, I think it was, 2007.
This is Jerry. one of the things that's an exciting extension of this is to develop flavor profiles and to work on defining the descriptors of the products that can be attributed to things that vary, like the cheese and blue. That sounds like a great project. I do a little work in wine competitions, and I think that would be fun.
I think another alternative way. Oh, go ahead.
This is Mimi. I'd like to address the raw milk while we're on the topic. I work on the Northeast New England Arc of Taste Committee, and just recently we presented 2 raw milk products out of Vermont for launching onto the ARC. And I'm very naive. My learning curve was really big on this, Matteo. But what struck me in doing that research and hearing today that the Presidios are the potatoes from the Northwest, the Navajo is from the Southwest, we mentioned California and Minnesota, may I suggest that the raw milk Presidia become a more regional rather than a national community? Would that help in its sustainability as a Presidia?
Well, the cheese
Are you asking me, or?
I wonder, Matteo, through your experience, and I wonder, from Lauren as well.
Okay, so here's my kind of takeaways from our experience in trying to build a national Presidia of geographically like disparate producers that were producing incredibly different styles of cheese. Personally, I think that a grouping of regional Presidia would, just from a governance perspective, from a community building perspective, and from a market development perspective, may make a lot of sense. While our particular cheeses may have more in common with producers, we make a blue cheese called Bailey Hazen Blue, for instance. It's a raw milk cheese. There are other raw milk cheese makers out there that are producing blue cheese, and in some that's maybe more common with Rogue Creamery or Point Reyes Farmstead. They make a raw milk cheese called Original Blue. The fact is that they're on the other side of the country, and complicated in lots of ways, in terms of just developing kind of some momentum and a community, and making these products relevant locally. So I actually think this has a better chance of succeeding if there is a local cheese guild, for instance, that would host the Presidia or administer it. That there are opportunities from just a governance perspective to structure this and localize it in a more meaningful way, which I think is fundamentally the goal of a slow food movement. And raw milk is the production of raw milk is quite different depending on where you are in this country. Also, I mean, farming systems are radically different in in different parts of the U.S. So in terms of building a common set of practices on the farm side, which I think is also a fundamental part of making not just the quality but the safety considerations work here. I think that's another important thing. So, personally, my, I'm listening. I'm open to, trying to work on this in any number of different possible iterations. But what I'm sensing is that there's quite a bit of energy and people willing to commit to making this thing go in the Northeast, and that it may make sense to try and regionalize it for some logistical reasons. But I'm not set on that.
Okay, well, thank you. I mean, I'm in New York, and the two cheeses that were recommended for the Arc of Taste came from Terra Madre delegates. So they were initiated from people who attended the conference as part of their application process. The two cheeses were Crowley and Plymouth. And there's a great history, as you know, and it's interesting too, in just focusing on the Northeast New England region, that each state has different regulations on raw milk. So that too plays into, the different parts of the country and trying to bring everyone together in a collaborative way. If they have to, even by regulation and sanitary standards or marketplace distribution, it's going to vary.
Sure. And just thinking about, Crowley and Plymouth, there's a great example of two products that are proximate geographically, that share a common production history, that are part of, the culture of central Vermont. Fact of the matter is there's another 52 cheesemakers in Vermont, and they're all producing cheeses that are quite different. A lot of them are raw milk, but they don't have those attributes. Are we looking for a Presidium? When I think of the West Country and Somerset cheddar, the traditional cheddar makers, Presidia in Somerset, they're making traditional English style, English raw milk, cloth bound, bandaged cheddar. Those bandaged cheddar producers have a lot in common, including the geography, production methods, starter cultures, farming practices that they've defined. Is it appropriate for Jasper Hill to glob onto the Crowley and Plymouth Presidia? We don't have that history. We're quite modern. We started in 2003, and we're producing cheeses that we're inventing our traditions as American cheesemakers, and they're very there's a handful of raw milk cheeses out there still in production, and I would say that maybe Crowley and Plymouth may be some of the only ones left in that sense, and I think that there's some real value there. But I think that there's a broad philosophical question that needs to be addressed head on at the beginning here. Does it make sense for modern producers to associate here with these very traditional old school cheeses that are threatened? There's only one producer of each of those of these cheeses, this cheese recipes, these technologies left. So So it's like fundamentally a different question, I think.
This is Jerry. One of the things that I'm thinking is that one of the criteria for being a Presidia is that the product be high enough in production, enough volume in production that it is advantageous to create a Presidium that would be supported by one of these two cheese producers. And is that an issue from your guys' perspective in terms of how much they could produce? And is it truly a Presidium project when you have a limited supply? Don't be mad.
No. Is Kate Turcotte from Shelburne Farms on the call? Okay. So these are fairly small producers. I would say that between them, they combined volume is probably somewhere in the 100 to 150,000.
Get that out of the way. Thank you.
About 150,000 pounds of cheese. So they're not tiny. Another interesting thing about them is that they're both purchasing milk, so they're not necessarily connected to a farm.
Right, and doing the research on both Crawley and Plymouth, what really built out the Arc of Taste nomination was the synergy between the local dairy herd and their individual cheese maker, and how they supported each other and also honored, the responsible raising of the dairy cows. So the integrity of the product from these two cheese makers went from field to cheese.
I think that you mentioned ARC product. I think it's an ideal ARC product, but has anybody talked to them about wanting to go nationwide if we do a Presidium?
I certainly haven't. I actually pulled back the two Arc of Taste nominations, even though it went through the jury process, because I needed to learn more, and there were a lot of questions from the jurors on these two products because of branding was an issue.
You're not proposing them as a Presidium then?
No, I was proposing them as an Arc of Taste nomination.
I'm sorry.
But then I was thinking down the road that, if a Presidia for raw milk cheese was regional, like the Northeast New England and the Northwest, maybe, as Matteo said, it would help in building the community, the communication amongst the cooperative and the marketplace.
Well, it would qualify under one of the categories that it's a distinctive regional, and that the recipes are unique or something that. But you might have several producers of the cheese. Are those two cheeses you're talking about very similar in their organoleptic qualities?
Yes.
Matteo, you might be able to answer that. One is the large granular cheese.
Yeah.
And then the other is, I believe, more Colby-like. Would you describe?
Yes, it's so Crowley is the base recipe for Colby cheese, which is the Wisconsin version of a recipe that at least anecdotally originated in Vermont, right? And so Plymouth and Crowley are in neighboring towns, and they're I think Crowley is the longest continuously operating cheese producer in the country.
That's correct.
Currently.
Wow.
So they're producing very similar cheese. You know, they're from a cheese technology perspective, they're quite related, closely related.
Could you do your Presidium around categories of cheese? Blues, Colby?
That, honestly, to me as a cheesemaker, makes more sense. The real issue that we're having as a emerging industry or movement is that artisan cheese, farmstead cheese making, pretty much died. Through the industrialization of dairy production and manufacturing. There isn't a lot of historical connection left. There's a couple of cheese plants in California, but they're all pasteurizing everything. So we've got this like resurgence, this renaissance in cheese making. There's 900 artisan cheesemakers, I think, somewhere in that ballpark nationwide. But generally, the way I describe this is that cheeses are generally the extension of the ego and the identity of the producer, right? And in your right. And so European tradition, the products have the identity. The cheese would have the identity and would be connected to a place, a geographical location, and individual producers are participating in the production of a historical product that has this collective cultural and economic meaning, whereas cheesemaking in the U.S. is really an individual act, and that's complicating. Ultimately, our goal and our intention at Jasper Hill is to create multiple producers of a single product within a defined geographical region, which is 10-mile radius of where we are. That's basically what we're trying to build, right? And that's a life's work here. And we're early days here. We've been in business for 13 years, and it's going to take a long time to build this. In Vermont, there's one other product that has multiple producers besides cheddar, right? And that is Tarentaise, which is Alpine style cheese that's made at Springbrook Farm and Thistle Hill Farm. They're producing the same cheese. So in Vermont, there aren't multiple producers of raw milk cheddar, for instance. We're cheddar country up here, but Shelburne Farms really is the only producer of raw milk cheddar. So, we've got all these like parts and pieces of what could potentially become Presidia locally, including Crowley and Plymouth. But those are like brilliant, but they don't necessarily have a lot in common with Bailey, Hayes, and Blue, which is what we're working on. So I'm a little stumped, actually.
Fun to work on.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions that, just while we have Elisa, Elisa, are you still on the line?
Yes,
Yes,
Hi, this is Alyssa with the Bodega Red. We're confused about some of the questions on the questionnaire, the form that we send in, and the one that is kind of we're sticking because we don't understand separation from. I think I don't have it in front of me, but it's the most frequent association. What does that mean exactly?
Alyssa. Elisa. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to let Alyssa know that there have been a bunch of back and forth emails between Barbara Bowman and some other people, and I just didn't know if you were on any of those emails because I can forward them to you, Alyssa.
I haven't been in on all of that, but it was posed to me that it was within our group. It was posed that it was unclear. So when Barbara was filling out the form, he basically put in. I need to go through all my files here, but she basically went into. I guess it was historic area of production or. Anyway,
significant
redundancy there as far as.
Go ahead, Elisa.
I think that there's been like I think that there's been mistake from my side. So, and I apologize for the questionnaire was not clear, but it referred to the local historic significance of the variety, and in the questionnaire, the field questionnaire that I received from Barbara yesterday, the information, that question was answered with that information, and that was okay. And I'm planning to discuss with my colleague here at the foundation on Monday, so that I could provide you with a feedback in the next, let's say, before meet next week.
Great, thank you so much.
Because I know that we had with so much back and forth, and so my commitment for next week is to have it to receive like the confirmation from here and get the to you meet next week.
Okay, thank you very much.
No, thanks for all your patience.
We had a question come in from Laura Luciano on the chat box. Is it possible for Slow Food USA to create umbrella brands for group products of the Presidia? Laura, I'm not sure what you mean. Do you think you could come on the phone and clarify your question?
Sure. So in listening to everybody about, especially the raw milk discussion, and I think there's different varieties of things that, for example, are groups that are on the Arc of Taste. So there's squash, there's the raw milk Presidia, there's, for example, potato. I'm just curious whether or not there's a way to create, I guess, what's called, so there was that one slide that you were showing how the Presidia was branded on products. I was just curious whether or not there's a way to brand products based on categories. So if we're talking about raw milk, for example, I know that there's a lot of complexities with the raw milk, but if there was an overarching umbrella that just branded, for example, the raw milk Presidia, then I think that overarching umbrella brand, for example, could be represented for a raw milk category, I guess is what I'm saying. And then when you start drilling down into regions and local areas, perhaps there's I know this is a little complicated, but perhaps there's some sort of a co-brand that links to that umbrella look and feel, if you will. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Elisa, do you have thoughts on that?
I think that, I mean, when the raw milk Presidium was first created, it started because of the compelling need to have a strong project on the defense of raw milk. So it started more as a campaign, let's say, and it was we worked together with producers to make this project tangible and visible to consumers. My view on that is that even though we have like an overarching Presidium taking under bringing under the producers of about one specific category. This will not be negatively influenced if there are also local and regional networks within this same overarching umbrella association, because one element of the Presidium is that it has connections with the local network. So in some ways we need to get local to get and develop local networks and local connections, and this would not, I mean, even this should not compete with a more general overarching association of taking into consideration the producers and products of the same category.
Right. There's a power, and I mean a power behind campaign. That word campaign. I think when you think about the Long Island cheese pumpkin, for example, it was always on the Arc of Taste, and we started what's called the Long Island Cheese Pumpkin Project. In doing that, and you know, I didn't know much about the Presidia. I just heard about it, but once we started doing this Long Island Cheese Pumpkin Project, we started to build a community and a fortress, if you will, of ambassadors that started to take on this project. And the project encompassed chefs and growers and eaters and school gardens and not-for-profits and libraries. And so now what we've done is we've actually put into motion almost like a branded campaign, if you will, that rallies around this cheese pumpkin. And the power in that is, and I'm not saying that everything should go this way, but there is a power about storytelling. And I think that if there's a way to do the storytelling and a campaign around these products where people can relate to them, I think it's one thing to state, you know, there's this tradition that's on the verge of extinction, or there's this variety that's, you know, is underutilized. But I think once we start to rally and be able to tell the stories, campaign, if you will, around these varieties, I think people do listen. So I guess that's my two cents, excuse me, coming from a branding background, is a way to be able to perhaps in some way categorize things with respect to what you were just saying, to these local and, you know, more intimate producers, if you will.
Thanks for your question, Laura.
I agree with you that.
Go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Elisa.
No, I just wanted to echo what you just said, that storytelling is a big part of the promotion and the work that the Presidium has to do with the support of Slow Food, of course. Many of the many of the projects that Lauren mentioned in the presentation, such as the narrative label, aims to share the story behind the product and the story of the product and the producers to the consumers. So I think that there's there's a lot of room for improvement from our side, especially, and we are open to all suggest to find more effective ways to communicate this project, the experiences and the expertise that you have developed at national and international level.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elisa. Do we have any other questions? I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We've been on for almost an hour and a half, a lot of great discussion and hopefully useful information. But any other questions?
I'd like to make a closing comment if I can, please.
Sure.
As a senior member, Elisa can testify to the fact that over the last 10 years, I've been pushing the idea that we needed to do more Presidio stuff. I've made many presentations at our national meetings, and I can't tell you how delighted I am today. This is one of the most stimulating slow food meetings I've been involved in the last year. Lauren, you have really done a beautiful job of understanding and presenting and become a champion for the fact that Presidium are a wonderful and major projects that can really push slow food forward in the United States and the world.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you so much.
That's really sweet. I appreciate that. And that actually, I think, brings up one last point. I am wondering who on the call is planning on attending Slow Food Nations, the festival we're having in Denver in July, and what kind of Presidia follow-up conversations would you like to see at the event? Originally, my thought was to do this presentation at the festival, but I think it's such a niche topic and it's a really small group of people, like how to start a Presidia. That is a very specific topic to have at a large conference. So if there's a way we can take the conversation of Presidia and make it really share it with the public through a session. I guess who's planning on being at Slow Food Nations and what capacity would you be interested in seeing the Presidia at the event?
This is Alyssa. We're still determining who is going to be our representative at the Slow Food Nation. But if I am there, I would be happy to participate in a panel.
Thanks, Alyssa.
This is Mimi, and I just learned the other day that I'm going to have the farm covered, and I'll be heading out to Colorado as well. You know, I still feel like I'm a student of the Presidia, and the learning curve is really steep, but I love trailblazing, so any way that I can lend a hand, Lauren, I will.
Thanks, Mimi. Excited to have you. Anyone else?
I'll be there. It's Laura.
Hi, Laura. We'll have the Long Island cheese pumpkin well represented. We're excited about that.
I know. Thanks.
Where can I get seed?
I could get you seed. You want seeds? The Long Island Regional Seed Consortium, you could get seeds from. You could also get seeds from Hudson Valley Seed Company. Those are two great resources.
Okay.
I could send you an email.
Please.
Okay.
Anyone else planning on being at Nations and something specific you would like to see discussed around Presidia at the event? Okay, well, thank you everyone for taking the time to be on this call. I hope it was interesting, informative, stimulating. Thank you to Elisa from Slow Food International, who has dialed in from Italy, where it's getting quite late there. We appreciate your time and your help in the Q&A, especially. And thank you to Jerry Warren, who helped really build the foundation for this presentation, and just everyone for taking the time. Really appreciate it. And any questions, feel free to send them my way.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, everybody.
Very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a
Bye,
nice day.
everyone. Cheers.
Bye.